So I've seen this too far, hashtag too far left trending on Twitter, and I genuinely want to understand better that side, their ideology and what they want and what they mean, and the issues that we seem to be having as divided as we are as a country and as partisan as we are as a country. So I was just scrolling through and I was screenshotting tweets that seem to have the reoccurring central message. And I got about 6 or 7 of them that I'll show in this video, but it ultimately boiled down to these things: safety, justice, equality, and then healthcare and housing equals a human right. So I have some words, some things to say about all that. C.S. Lewis destroyed why equality can't be an ideal. It's medicine. It's not a food, and you can't live on medicine alone. And unfortunately, as he wrote, and I agree, and a lot of people agree, not all people are equal. That's a hard pill to swallow. Not all people have the same IQ. Not all people have the same work ethic. Not all people have the same, drive to be dignified by working. Or, there's any number of variables where we can show that people aren't necessarily equal, but that doesn't mean that they all shouldn't be given the same opportunities. So equal opportunity is something that we must strive for. And the best way to think about that is a football roster. I'm coaching right now, and every one of these kids, we have over almost 200 kids on the team. If we were to say they're all equal, then how would we ever delineate who starts, who plays? But the way that, that our culture seems to see things is that, well, we have to treat them all equal, and not one is better than the other. But the thing that's different is we know they're not all equal, but we treat them all the same, and we give them all a fair shot. Now, that unfortunately means that not all of them get to play as much as one other person might. But they've all accepted the fact that, they don't cry about that, because there's an acceptance to a higher ideal, a higher objective ideal, which is the team, not individual I, being successful. So there's that. The argument constantly made rests on modernity, though. They claim we're too advanced to have homelessness, people who can't afford health care, and etc. That type. We're too advanced. There's no reason why we shouldn't not have those things nowadays. But this argument rests on a material evidence when this has to do with the soul. A horse can be only led to water but not forced to drink. And when it comes to health care, barring serious illnesses, what is it people can't afford? I'm truly asking. I don't understand, because for serious illnesses, people that don't prepare, don't save, usually find themselves, in tough spots, and that's part of it. Now, take it to another level. Maybe they can't afford to save. They're living paycheck to paycheck, and I've been there growing up. I know what that's like, where you're living in literally one catastrophe away from ruining you. So I know what that's like, and I know there's people out there. But ideally, I think to combat that, we had some traditions set up where there were systems already in place to help combat that. Things like the nuclear family, the family sticking together. I'm not just talking about mom, dad, and siblings, but outside of that. And there's a ton of variables that have affected that, but that's been completely destroyed and continues to be attacked. Church/religious places, that again is being attacked in our modern arrogance. It was ideally supposed to be a place of community where you were able to go and get help from people that cared and had kind of like a reason to do it. And then friends, workplace, etc. There were systems in place that were meant to help people that were absolutely at hell's gate. But all in all, barring all that, ease, I think, is what is behind all of that thought, all of that ideal. And it's ease is what they want, and they want to make it ideal as if it was a promised right. Nothing but suffering in work was promised us since Genesis. You don't have to be a Christian, but in some ways Genesis preludes Christianity itself. But you go back to that original chapter, and after the kick out of the Garden of Eden, which is essentially the start of history for humankind, we're promised nothing but hard work and troubles and suffering. That's all you're promised. That's all you're promised in this world. But we've been getting better ever since then. Really, if you look at it in that perspective too, since the beginning of history, we've been getting so much better at this, and we're just still not patient enough. And the thing I had thought about that was these things take time, and utopia is forever a city on the horizon. It's always going to be on the horizon, this perfect utopia that you want to set up. It's never going to be, I think, fully realized, and especially not in our lifetimes. As for safety, I think it's, it was one of the central themes I saw in the Twitter feed, and it's like, what safety? What an ironic contradiction when we no longer respect authority or cops and actively rebel against them and the systems that are intended to keep us safe. And in fact, actually, how dare you? How dare you ask for safety? How dare you demand safety as an essential staple of your far left ideology and then hate on cops? It's so contradictory. In fact, it all comes back to bad people doing bad things. The soul. That's kind of what I was getting at with the last few points. Not the system, the soul. What oppressive freedom-eating system can you implement that will make man want to be a better man? Seriously. Who can do that? And then justice. That's my favorite. It's one I've been meditating on a lot lately. I saw through all the tweets. Justice. A lot. You hear about social justice warriors. But it's not justice, not as an objective, blind value, or the untouchable and transcendental judge. It's not that justice, but it's the justice as subjective, justice as you define it. After all, with all the corrupt conspiracies suffocating the atmosphere, who can you trust, far left, with justice, other than yourselves? Thus the formation of the social justice warrior. The original statue, the original image of justice was a woman with a balanced scale and a blindfold over her eyes, just so you know. To sum it all up, actually, this whole equality isn't even real, true equality, because it's not in the objective sense. It's not this. It's not solely based on an individual subjective idea. It's the equality you want for the dispossessed, but not for cops, not for authority you deem corrupt. Not for elected leaders of your political opponent or the ideology that you oppose. And it's not for anyone you don't deem fit. And that's not true equality. All in all, too far left, that's fine. You guys want to glorify it and stand on that, that's fine. But the one thing that is troubling is no one has said or defined yet as a society when the left goes too far. We know very clearly when the right does. That's very clear. We've seen that throughout history. But we have not talked about when the left goes too far, and it can, and no one wants to. So let's talk about it.